From Kern Government Television, welcome to this week's Kern County Board of Supervisors meeting, originating from the County Administrative Center located at 1115 Truxtun Avenue, Bakersfield, California. Kern County's vision is to create and maintain a customer-centered county government designed to garner the confidence, support, and trust of the people we serve. Today's Kern County Board of Supervisors meeting will convene momentarily.
Board to reconvene. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Supervisor Gleason?
Here.
Supervisor Scribner?
Here.
Supervisor Maggard?
Here.
Supervisor Couch?
Here.
Supervisor Perez?
Thank you, and welcome to the Tuesday, April 25th, 2017, 2 p.m. session of the Kern County Board of Supervisors. I will ask County Counsel Mark Nations to report on actions taken in closed session.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Items 92, 93, 94, 95 were all closed sessions on the agenda. All of those were held, and there is no reportable action taken out of any of those. In connection with number 96, the number of cases listed was 3. We actually only discussed 1. The other 2 will be deferred to a later time. And there is no reportable action on any of on the one we did discuss. Thank you.
Mr. Nations, thank you very much. And so now we will consider our consent agenda. If you'd like to follow along with our agenda today, they are available on the 2 tables next to the doors. And all items listed with a CA above the item are considered to be routine and non-controversial by county staff. Consent items will be considered first and may be approved by one motion. If a member of the audience wishes to comment or ask questions regarding an item or items on the consent agenda, they may do so prior to a vote being taken on the consent agenda. A member of the board may remove any item from the consent agenda, and it will be considered in listed sequence with an opportunity for any member of the public to address the board concerning the item before action is taken. And so at this time, I'll read through our consent agenda. Starting on page 2, items 3 and 4 are on consent. On page 3, items 5, 6, and 7 are on consent. Page 4, all items 8 through 13 are on consent. On page 5, items 14 through 21 are on consent. On page 6, items 22 through 26 are on consent. Page 7, items 27 through 31 are all on consent. Page 8, all items 32 through 41 are on consent. On page 9, items 42 through 47 are on consent. Page 10, all items 48 through 55 are on consent. And finally, on page 6, we have items 56 as well as 59 through 63 on consent. And so now I'll ask if there are any members of the audience that would like to make comment on the consent agenda. Okay, seeing none, I'll return to the board and ask if there's any items they wish to remove, or I will seek a motion to approve.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Please cast your votes.
Motion is approved. All ayes.
Thank you. And now returning to page 2 on our agenda, item number 1. This is public presentations. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons to address the board on any matter not on this agenda, but under the jurisdiction of the board. Board members may respond briefly to statements made or questions posed. They may ask a question for clarification, make a referral to staff for factual information, or request staff to report back to the board at a later meeting. So now I'll ask if there are any members of the audience that would like to make a public presentation. Okay, seeing none, then we'll move on now to board member announcements or reports. Okay, seeing no requests from the board members, then we're going to go all the way back to page, give me a moment here. Page 11 on our agenda. We have first under County Administrative Office, Human Resources Division, item 57. This is a proposed memorandum of understanding with Kern County Prosecutors Association, expiring September 30th, 2017. I'll ask Devin Brown, who heads up our Human Resources Division. Mr. Brown, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Chairman Scribner and members of the board. The item before you is a brief short-term MOU with the Kern County Prosecutors Association that will expire in September 30th, 2017. The county and the association have been without a contract since March 27th of 2015, And after several productive meetings between the parties, we have settled on the proposed successor MOU before you. Some of the substantive provisions in the agreement include changes to the way that overtime for these members is going to be calculated, that overtime will now be calculated in line with the requirements of the Fair Labor Standards Act of 1938. Additionally, the county has agreed to count prior service credit with other district attorney offices within the state of California or similar service towards an employee's or future employees' accruals and longevity pay. The idea behind this change is to enhance the ability for the district attorney's office to recruit prosecutors and retain prosecutors within their agency. Additionally, because KCPA members are general members and similarly situated with SEIU members, we've agreed to extend the provisions of bereavement leave and retiree health supplement program opt-out ability that has been previously agreed with SEIU. These two provisions have been successfully applied to SEIU since 2016 of last year, and have again contributed to a reduction in the county's unfunded liabilities with respect to other post-employment benefits. The county has worked hard to get its associations like KCPA to agree to these short-term agreements during the current fiscal climate, and KCPA has been very cooperative and been a good partner in this effort. And our recommendation is that you approve this MOU and approve staff's recommendation, and the CAO would like to say something as well.
Very good. Mr. Alsop,
Yeah.
good afternoon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. In January this year, the county's independent elected auditor controller presented a payroll review, as you recall, that identified potential changes to the way the county compensates overtime. Under your direction, implementation of these changes will provide the county with significant savings during a declared fiscal emergency. KCPOA has shown outstanding leadership in working with us to do their part moving forward with these changes, despite us not being able, given our financial position, to provide them a needed pay increase. We thank President Michael Caves and his association board for their continued cooperation and partnership, and my office looks forward to continuing contract discussions in the next fiscal year. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you so much. I'll now ask if there are any members of the audience who would like to speak to this item. Okay, seeing none, I'll return to the board. Supervisor Perez.
Thank you. I see Mr. Caves here, and I wanted to say thank you from this board. You're the first organization that will be working through some complicated issues, as you know, as we have been for several years. You've really shown remarkable leadership as a team player. Not just within your own association and profession, but as a county, family member. And it really is so refreshing and encouraging, and I just want to say thank you. So, hats off, and let's continue working together so that we benefit and progress together. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Perez. Supervisor Gleason.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll echo those thoughts and also share how pleased I am, proud I am of the work that the CEO staff has done in building this collaborative effort and this focus, and I'm looking forward to seeing it continue. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. I concur with both your comments. Much appreciation to the Prosecutors Association as well as our CAO staff for all the hard work that went into this. So do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
Motion is approved, all ayes.
Very good. That takes us now to item 58 on our agenda. This is also under the Human Resources Division of the CIO's office. Proposed addition of one Human Resources Manager and one Senior Human Resources Specialist, confidential, to Public Works Department. Budget Unit 8954, and deletion of 1 Senior Human Resources Analyst and 1 Human Resources Specialist, 1-2 confidential from Human Resources Division. This is Budget Unit 1310, and this will represent a $226,000 plus savings to said department. And so, Mr. Brown, we'll ask you to elaborate on this item as well, please.
Thank you, Chairman Scrivener, members of the board. Again, I want to thank Director of Public Works Craig Pope for collaborating with the Human Resources Division on this effort. In the fall of last year, the two of us got together, and they had a need for somebody in their department to take the lead in human resources management and really pull together after the merger of all the 3 departments that combine the Public Works Department. Have somebody that manages their people, and it was not an easy task for the person that's been assigned to that role. She's worked hard with Public Works staff and management, and has done an excellent job up to this point of moving that effort forward. Something that every department and every organization needs is a person to manage their people and make sure that we get the most performance out of our employees, and that they're rewarded properly, and that they're guided and trained properly as well. And so those are some of the components that this position, the Human Resources Manager, will be continuing to do with the Public Works Department. And they will also continue to do the recruitment that the staff in my department does with the oversight from our leadership in the CAO's office, and partnership as well. So we think this is a good opportunity again to continue to save general fund dollars. As you mentioned, Chairman Scrivener, it's a $226,000 annual savings to the general fund, and deleting the 2 positions from the Human Resources Budget Unit, which is funded completely through general fund. And the Public Works Department is not similarly situated. They are mostly a non-general fund department, and so there will be an increase to the non-general fund expenses, but with their funding revenue, they are able to absorb that cost within their current budget, and again, be able to provide their department with the needed management for human resources that they've been without for some time. So it's with that I recommend that your board approve the addition of 1 Human Resources Manager and 1 Senior Human Resources Specialist, confidential, to Budget Unit 8954, which is the Public Works Department Budget Unit, and the deletion of 1 Senior Human Resources Analyst and 1 Human Resources Specialist, 1-2, from Budget Unit 1310, which is the Human Resources Division Budget Unit, effective April 29, 2017, and refer the matter to the Human Resources Division to amend the departmental positions and salary schedule. And again, I'd like to thank Director Pope for his collaboration and leadership in this effort, and it's appreciated.
Mr. Brown, thank you very much. I'll ask now if there are any members of the audience who would like to make any comment on this item. Okay, seeing none, I'll return to the board.
Motion on staff's recommendation. And thank you for the thoughtfulness in your approach.
We have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
Motion is approved. All ayes.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Pope, to you and your staff, thank you for the collaboration and for all the efforts. Thanks to the County Administrative Office and Mr. Brown in particular. And so that concludes our business on today's agenda. So I'll entertain a motion to oh, I'm sorry. I will announce it. Thank you, Madam Clerk. I had it right here. Madam Clerk just reminded me, we did have an item that was continued from the morning. This was a request from Christine Lollar, United Way Director of Homelessness Resources, to address the board with an update on the work of the Kern County Homeless Collaborative. Are you in the? Is she in the audience, or who do? Okay, would you like to come forward? Okay, thank you. So now this item is 2A. We added it to our agenda, so we're going to see if we'll have that presentation. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Honorable Supervisors, through the chair, thank you so much for your time today. I am Christine Lollar, Director of Homelessness Resources from United Way of Kern County, and part of our role is to provide oversight to the Kern County Homeless Collaborative. Several of you have been meeting with us over the past few months. We did extend an invitation. Governing Board Chair Carlos Baldovinos is the Executive Director of the mission, and you have graciously given us some of your time to meet one-on-one and talk about your districts specifically and things that are happening in your areas, and as well as with the point-in-time count. And we actually have another meeting next week with Mr. Alsop. So if you haven't met with us yet, we would encourage you to do that. You'll see the bubbles. That's kind of a play on Vicki Davis was a young woman from the Tent City effort that happened a few years ago. And she inspired us when she said, when I was homeless, I felt like all the information in the world about being homeless and those solutions was floating around the world in a bubble, and I could never catch it. And that really resonated with our CEO, Della Hodson, and we determined to create a broad community effort to educate people about the risks and the myths of homelessness and what they can do as citizens. You have before you a document that shows the power of collective action, and those are things that have been going on over the last year. The population-focused priorities remain chronic homelessness, veteran homelessness, families, and youth age 14 to 24, which we're watching very closely due to the national situation. That community education component has transpired into and resulted into over 700 community partners being trained on how they can refer to homelessness resources. And that includes many of your county departments, child support services, all of the high school district on-site staff have been trained, DHS, and we have a new website called endkernhomelessness.org that is evolving, directly a relation of the Kern County Sheriff Department asking for things that they can access while they are in the field. That website will also help us connect with people who are in communities and want to help but don't know how. We are conducting presentations, and we have launched a middle school program with a pilot at Standard District to teach them to be advocates rather than victims. And we focus on avoiding their transition into the streets due to family discord. That's the #1 reason for homelessness youth. And we teach them to be advocates, but along the way, they do a project for homelessness, and they become volunteers instead. We know that if a youth lands on our streets, it is less than 24 hours before human trafficking approaches them. We also conducted a faith-based survey of over 400 places of worship, which has allowed us to give them some guidance about things like cleaning up afterwards, which affects city and county governments, as well as how they can tie people to long-term sustainable housing first. Collaborative-wide, the federal government has required continuums of care, and the Homeless Collaborative, as you know, is the Bakersfield-Kern Continuum of Care, to have uniform entry and access for all services. Well, it's a challenge for all of us to figure out where our family of 4 will eat dinner at the same time and everyone have the same opinion. When you have 28 agencies, it can be an incredible challenge to all agree to have the same process no matter where someone enters. And this group has, I'm proud to say, accomplished that. We have a very successful assessment tool that we use called the VI SPDAT, and a by name list, which helps us to prioritize the most vulnerable individuals and place them in housing first. Prioritization calls happen weekly with all of the housing providers. They case conference together. This is a standard that is being used by 60 other communities across the nation, and you can be assured that the collaborative is very proactive in considering best practices and studying what those other communities are doing. After a voucher is released, they are connected with long-term services and case management is provided. We do not believe homelessness ends by handing someone a key. It's much more layered than that. There's a culture transition from moving from the streets, and we provide the support for them to do that. One of the things that we talked about that was important we wanted you to know was that only 10 of our 28 members, and I say only, are HUD COC funded. That's another 18 agencies that are at the table that don't receive dollars. And it shows great networking and collaborative spirit. 2 of those are administrative grants, United Way for planning, and Kern County Behavioral Health and Recovery Services for the HMIS data system. $5.4 million annually comes into this community through that federal HUD COC grant. 3.8 million of that goes to the Housing Authority for their programs, and 1.6 million goes to homelessness service providers. One thing that we are looking to your leadership for in the coming days is to help us with community discharge plans from hospitals, incarceration, and foster care. And we are this close to releasing the medical discharge plan, which we're very, very excited about. And we are working with the Sheriff's Department on the discharge plan for incarceration. Many of the access points to services are not brick and mortar agencies, but rather under underpasses and on the streets. Outreach is pivotal to this effort. And we work very closely with Fled Bakersfield Ministries, one of our key members, and a very proactive outreach committee made up of over 30 community partners and members. We are working with businesses on a new project called Commerce Cares, where outreach experts work with businesses to teach them how they can direct people to services. So many, we hear the term service resistant. Well, on the day that they've gained enough trust to say, yes, sign me up for services, whether that's a business or a service provider, it doesn't matter. We want to make sure that individual knows the day that they're trusted. That was a program fashioned after a very successful one in LA, and trust is pivotal. So we want to empower and support our businesses. Again, you will see very much how extensive studying and best practices across the U.S. are being implemented here. You can be very proud of these agencies who aren't intimidated by creative and out-of-the-box solutions. Finally, the point-in-time count. I want to remind you that it's just a snapshot in time, not a full and all-inclusive number. We would love to meet with those of you who we haven't met with yet to talk specifically about your district and the transition we've seen. There is a 47% reduction since the point-in-time count started in 2007. Metro Bakersfield has seen a 50% reduction, single adults 49%, families 13%, and those numbers are over 2016. Meth use, a big portion of the point-in-time count is the subpopulation data that we extrapolate that helps us to know if we need to adjust our services. And we found meth use down 51%, and we believe that to be the work of the launch that you have done with that great collaborative locally. All drug use across all categories was down 40 to 60%. And that's due also in part to a number of behavioral health programs we have within the collaborative. 67% of those surveyed have accessed emergency shelters, which shows the productivity and positive investment of ESG grants locally. Those discharged from jail and prison was down 8%. However, 60% of those still remain unsheltered. Rural and countywide in all areas, with the exception of the Kern River Valley, are seeing decreases, substantial decreases. And I want you to know that as far as the Kern River Valley goes, we have met with them for day-long trainings twice. And again, our board of directors met with them this morning on furthering the strategy to help those displaced by the Erskine fire and also the homeless that they had in their area before that. So unless there are any questions, that concludes my presentation. We want you to know that we are expanding those bubbles of knowledge, going the extra mile together. We cannot end homelessness alone by the Homeless Collaborative. It takes each community, each neighborhood, each faith-based agency, all of us together. And you have been very supportive of the collaborative, and we thank you so much for that. Do you have any questions for me?
Thank you, Mrs. Lollar. I'll ask if there are any questions from members of the board. Supervisor Gleason.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much for the presentation. I'd like to talk to you a quick second about the point in time count. And you talked a little bit, you addressed some of it about the Kern River Valley Erskine fire and the devastation that's occurred up there in the past year. But you didn't say a count. Do you have a count for homelessness up there?
I do.
And did you take that count? My understanding is you took that count in January?
We did. It's required by the government to take it.
Oh, that's
in
why you took
January.
it. But the homelessness, is it, let me ask you a dumb question, is it seasonal?
It can be seasonal for different areas. In the mountains, we see it go up in the summertime.
Right, that's what I was thinking.
Yes.
So can you give me numbers for January and what you're expecting this year? And
I can tell you that we counted 35 households between 4 and 8 a.m. on that morning. But I can also tell you that according to their report this morning, they estimate as many as 100. They regularly serve 30 people. They serve breakfast every day to about the same core of 30 people. There were some advocates in the room that feel that that may be over 100, but we've asked them to begin to compile a by name list for that area so we can address each of those families and households individually.
okay, I would like to help with that effort to collect those names. And so if after this meeting or sometime real soon, you can connect with my office and we can sit down and go over how that process is working and how, what we're
Certainly.
doing about that.
Certainly.
Thank you very much.
Supervisor Mackard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your report, and I appreciated the opportunity we had to speak the other day. Mr. Alsop, I have a question for you about a report that was forwarded to me of white vans from Los Angeles County dumping homeless people with $25 bus tickets, $25 for a bus ticket, to get on the Get Bus and drive into Bakersfield. I'll give you some more background on that, but I'd like us to find out if that's true. A few years ago, there was an issue with a mental health facility in Fresno County putting people in a bus and shipping them to Kern County. And I'd like to have a feel for how much of our homeless issue is the result of people importing homeless people to our community. So can we follow up about that?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
If I may, I can tell you that we have some data that we can dig deeper into the point in time count. We do know that over 23% of individuals come here homeless already before they get to Kern County. We have been working very closely with our LA counterpart, our COC there, and we've been contacted and asked if we would provide services because they wanted to send people here for the lower rents.
Isn't that convenient?
Yes, and that's kind of how we felt about it when we don't, we struggle with housing capacity for the homeless that we have here, and that point was made very clear to them. However, we have agreed to meet further for the Mojave, Lancaster area and work together on some issues in that community so that we are collaborating together.
Do you have any data on, did you say 20% of our homeless came here already homeless? Is that the number you gave?
I believe it's 23%, yes.
Do you have any information about where they're coming here from?
We do, and I can get you that full report.
I'd like our whole board to have that.
I can send that to you.
To have an understanding of not only where they're coming from, but how they're getting here and why they think this is the place they need to come. Because one of my concerns is that we are becoming the beacon for others to try to migrate here.
The exception to the aversion to that would be sometimes with veterans. Our agency, California Veterans Assistance Foundation, is very well known, both statewide and beyond, for their ability to help intervene with the VA and other services. So we hear that a lot, that they came here for veteran services. We have 40,000 veterans that live in Kern County. And so the fact that they feel welcome is a good thing. And we have to be very sensitive when we work real close with a 60-member alliance for Southern California and the Central Cal Roundtable. Homelessness across the state is important. That said, we want to be wise with our resources for the homeless issue we have in our county. So it's a fine line. We care about homelessness across the board, but we don't. The van issue, I haven't heard for a couple years. We addressed that 2 years ago. I'd be very interested in knowing if there's anything we can do, if that's resurfacing. There was
Apparently it's resurfacing.
Okay, I would like to know about that. There was a panhandling situation a couple years ago where they were busing people in for that, and that has subsided.
I'd be interested as well then, when you give us the information about where they're migrating here from, about identifying how much of it has to do with veteran services, and if those are being matched by the resources that it isn't the county veteran services organization I believe you're referring to. You're talking about the state connected one, right?
Yes, but they work very closely together. So where one may have a resource for a certain veteran, they will partner with, Dick Taylor and his team. They very much have a, where the best fit is mentality.
Well, whatever you can get us about not only where they're migrating from, but this veteran component, I'm interested in that as well. I'm sure we all are.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Any other comments from the board? Okay, seeing none, Ms. Lollar, thank you so much for the presentation, and I'll go ahead and request a motion to receive and file the presentation.
Motion.
Thank you.
Second.
Please cast your votes.
Please reconfirm your vote. Thank you. The motion is approved. All ayes.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, and that brings us to the conclusion of our agenda today, and so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn to Tuesday, May 2nd at 9 a.m.
So moved.
We are adjourned.